Greetings, Benjamin J. from BENZTRAINZ with another in the series. Well, I'll follow up on that Marx 595 that arrived. $10 on eBay. I bought this for parts. The guy had this listed on eBay for $17.50. And the thing was just abysmal. It was just in terrible condition. So, in any case, I offered him $10 for it. He instantly accepted. So, I've replaced the left front wheel. This was the original. And as you see, it is just eaten alive. This is called intergranular degeneration, better known as wheel rot. And as you see, this pot metal is literally just turning to powder. You can just break pieces of it off with your thumbnail. I mean, it is in really, really terrible condition. In any case, didn't even need the wheel puller. It literally fell off the axle. So I went through the parts box, installed a new wheel, scraped the rust off, really cursory. Covered it with an ink marker and a couple of drops of oil just to give me some idea of what it's actually going to look like. Cleaned the brushes, a couple of drops of oil. This is the result. This is pulling 12 Lionel cards. As you see, up and running with absolutely no problems at all. So was it worth $10? You tell me. I installed a headlight, the motor runs perfectly, forward and reverse, E-unit works. The shell is actually in decent shape once you get the rust off of it. So I'll very likely strip this and just repaint it. Anyway, just to make it look presentable, I just touched it up with some ink marker and a couple of drops of oil. Installed the headlight, lubricated the motor, replaced that wheel, and this is the result. This old locomotive is running just absolutely splendidly, as you can see. That is about 40% power, pulling 12 Lionel cars. So $10 on eBay. So I've got to say it again. Don't overlook the junk. You know, you can buy some really bottom of the line junk locomotives, and in just a matter of a few minutes, you get them up and running. Some cursory touch-up to make them look nice, and you have a decent locomotive that costs you $10. And as you see, this is running splendidly. So the motor is worth more than I paid for the entire locomotive. So single reduction motor. All I really had to do was scrape the contactor, a couple of drops of oil, and replace that left front wheel. This is the result. I've done nothing else except add a headlight to it. Nothing else at all. Just lubrication, some basic cleaning. So with just a few minutes work, you can repaint this. You have a really decent locomotive for $10. Now, I always stress, you can do this on an absolute shoestring budget. Pennies on the dollar, if anything else, simply by buying stuff that no one else wants. You know, this was junk. This was bottom of the barrel junk. I bought it for parts. But like the last 16 locomotives that I have bought, they don't run up, or they don't wind up as parts. They wind up running. And in this case, this was running in 2 minutes after I took it out of the box, literally. And as you see, this is running perfectly. This has only been running about 10 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. So the longer it runs, the better it will run. So what it needs now is just to run. So I will go ahead and run this the rest of the day, and then we'll address the paint and we'll take it from there. So as you see, it was definitely worth the $10. The motor by itself was worth $10. The parts contained in it are worth 4 times what I paid for this locomotive. So, really all I had to do is replace that left front wheel. Excuse me. So, didn't even have to pull the old one off. The old wheel fell off as soon as I moved the push rod out of the way. It literally fell off the axle. So, pressed that new wheel on, touched up the paint a bit just to get the rust off of it. Wanted to see what kind of condition it was actually in. As you see, from a foot away, this actually looks like a fairly decent locomotive already. So, I've got to say it, don't overlook the junk. You know, for pennies on the dollar, you can have some really, really decent running and looking locomotives, absolutely rock bottom, dirt cheap prices by buying junk on eBay. You know, this was definitely worth the $10. Even if I only use it for parts, it was worth the $10. But in this case, I've got a new motor, working unit, headlight works, The body itself is in actually decent condition. It had some rust on it, yes. The markers are broken off, but that's pretty common on 595. Oh dear. Excuse me again. Anyway, I just wanted to do a follow-up video on this. As I always stress, don't overlook the junk. You know, if you look on eBay, you can still find some fairly decent locomotives at really decent prices. Now, this looked dreadful, which is why no one bought it. No one wanted it. It was covered in rust. It was obvious the wheel was literally falling apart. The contractor itself is covered in green verdigris. And you look at these things and it's just trash. You know, if I hadn't bought this, if no one had bought it, it probably wound up in a trash can. But literally 2 minutes work got it running. And then, like I said, I didn't even have to pull this wheel off. It literally fell off the axle. So took this wheel off, pressed a new wheel on it, and this is the result. Took a cloth, just basically got the surface rust off. Now, obviously the metal's been damaged slightly. So, a coat of textured paint, and if you don't want to pull the handrails off, don't. You can set this on top of a cardboard box right now. Pull the lens off, give this a one coat of textured paint. You wouldn't have to do anything else to it. It would look more than acceptable, and it'll run the rest of your life. And it's in actually fairly decent condition. It runs nice, as you see. And it's pulling 12 full-size Lionel cars with no problem at all at 40% power. So this is running really well. As you can see, no problems with this at all. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money on locomotives, or if you don't have a lot of money to spend on locomotives, this is the way to do it. You know, the whole point of this entire series is finding ways to cut corners and buy locomotives absolutely dirt cheap, rock bottom prices. This was definitely worth the 10 bucks and the few minutes it took to get it up and running. Like I said, give this a spray of textured paint, this would look like it came out of the factory. It's in actually decent condition. It didn't have any damage. The only thing that was wrong with it was sheer neglect. This thing's been sitting for decades. Literally decades. Very likely in a garage or a basement. Someplace damp, someplace that stayed damp. So, as you see, it's up and running. It looks acceptable already, and I've done nothing to it except basically wiped off the surface rust. Covered it with an ink marker and a couple of drops of motor oil and a soft paintbrush. So the longer this runs, the better it will run. The only repair I did was replacing that left front wheel. And as you see, this old locomotive is running just absolutely splendidly. No problems with this at all. 10 bucks on eBay, made the guy an offer, and he instantly accepted. So obviously no one was going to buy this thing. And as soon as I contacted him, within 2 minutes, he had accepted that offer. Anyway, 10 bucks on eBay, up and running, Marx 595. No damage to it other than the paint itself. So, as you see, it doesn't look bad, even having done nothing to it yet. Just touched up the missing paint with an ink marker and a couple of drops of oil just to see what it would look like. A new coat of paint, this would be virtually new looking locomotive. Is it perfect? Nope, it's far from it. It's missing both of the markers. They've been broken off for years and years and years. And of course it had one bad wheel. But taking into that, all that into consideration, that's why I can get these things so cheap. You buy stuff that looks bad and no one wants it. But if you look past the paint and the intergranular degeneration and the broken markers and actually look at the locomotive, as you see, it doesn't look bad at all. And the nice thing about it, of course, is the fact that it's up and running, and not only running, but running absolutely perfectly. So I installed a new left front wheel and a light bulb. That's it. That's all I've done to it, other than basic cleaning, maintenance, and lubrication. Nothing else. So, I gotta say it, don't overlook the junk. You can do this on an absolute shoestring budget, just by doing things just like this. Anyway, I just want to do a follow-up video on this 595. As you see, it's up and running. No one would object to owning this. It's more than acceptable looking, and it runs splendidly. So I'll be running this the rest of the day just to give it some runtime. That's what it needs. So the new wheels installed, light bulbs installed, E-unit works. Touched up the paint a bit. I'm more than happy with this. It was definitely worth the $10. There's no doubt about that. Anyway, I just want to do a follow-up video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email, BENZTRAINZ@gmail.com. And as always, thank you for watching.